So you're going to be switching the slides for me?
No, it's not working on here either. I had to start it, stop everything, and actually restart it. At least that worked before. Hopefully that'll work this time too.
Well, maybe we will take the whole 50 minutes. I don't know. Uh-oh. 2 gallons of milk. 3 dozen eggs. The wrong notes. So we use the, does it look green to you? From trash to green? So let's, a little background on the project. The Resighini Rancheria is nestled along the Klamath River in the Yurok ancestral territory of Northern California. Has abundant natural resources, including wetland nursery habitats for important fish species, coho salmon, specifically cutthroat trout, steelhead, red-legged frog, northern red-legged frog, tailed frog, a lot of listed in sensitive species. We had a lot of solid waste issues that were widespread on the tribal lands. EPA funding allowed us to develop a QAPP program and to address a lot of the solid waste and resulting environmental problems. We present the results of 5 years of cleanup, environmental monitoring, and related activities. Next slide. So we do weekly patrols to document the extent of the solid waste, illegal dumping and that type of thing. We did multiple large-scale cleanup projects. We do community outreach, pass out pamphlets and that type of thing when people come to our annual electronic waste and hazardous waste disposal events. And we issue violations and fines when some of the land assignments aren't in compliance with tribal regulations. And we have a solid waste, so recently my co-worker Tyler Jones has been working on a new solid waste disposal ordinance that's been drafted this year and is probably going to be approved later this year or early next year. Next slide, please. So just a little background on the project area. We're at the lower part of the Klamath Basin here. The tan is the Klamath drainage. It's the Yurok ancestral territories, approximately this area here, maybe a little smaller. The watershed of the Klamath, this is just context for where we are. The watershed of the Klamath is approximately 15,700 square miles. It's approximately 286 miles long. It goes from Oregon, the headwaters, up here in the Klamath Falls area, and it comes out to the Pacific Ocean at Klamath. And there's 4 dams being removed, well 3 now because one's already been removed this year. Yeah, I don't know if everybody's familiar with that big project. I think it's the largest dam removal project in history to date, at least in the United States. The Resighini Rancheria, and I want to emphasize, the Resighini name comes from a landowner of the previous land from 1937, I believe. The government bought the land from a man named Augustus Resighini. It has nothing to do with the tribe itself, other than the name. And it's about 455 acres of land that we monitor and clean up. And we have an enrollment about 150 people. And on wide diversity of habitat types, we have floodplain ponds, gravel, bars, creeks, intermittent tribs, grasslands, willow and cottonwood forests, and up on the, well, next slide. Potential impacts from solid waste, as you probably all know, is water quality degradation, habitat degradations, e-waste and hazardous materials leaching into the soil. And this is approximate boundaries where we are on the Klamath estuary. We're at the upper estuary, so we do get intertidal influence. And here's where the Klamath would come out at the Pacific Ocean. That's just for some context. We have important fish nursery habitat, amphibian breeding habitat, and a lot of other aquatic resources and Natural Resources. Next slide. Here's the basic boundaries of the trust and fee lands that would be in this overlaid on this area here. We have the gravel bar. We have a gravel pit that's operational. We have our tribal offices, a campground that was flooded out in 2017, I believe, and there was a federal declaration, and that's been restored. And we have the Klamath River is flowing this way to the west, and this area here is coastal redwood, mixed hardwood forest. We have a couple of permanent creeks that come down this way, head north, and then out into the Klamath here. This is Wachell Creek. And then we have a junior creek, which starts with some springs and rainfall and is intermittent, and then flows along this road, East Klamath Beach Road. And I'm going to talk about specific areas as we go. We did a cleanup here on the lane, Wachell Flat. These are our floodplain ponds that as the river rises in the winter, this can all be flooded and just go right through here. And these ponds have been the focus of some of our primary wetlands research. And next slide. So this is showing the wetlands inventories that would be impacted by a lot of the solid waste. This is a Fish and Wildlife map from 2006 of the different types of wetlands. There's I don't have the codes memorized, but there's a lot of willow and cottonwood forest wetlands, forested wetlands, and permanent ponds, a man-made pond here. And next slide. So I think that you could see from that slide that we're about 60% wetlands on the whole reservation. Oh, I can look over there and see. So our challenges for the GAP program was we had a lot of illegal dumping, and we had abandoned vehicle problems. We had vandalism with gates and trespassing. A couple times we had some grass fires and arson in the last 5 years, some break-ins. We had flooding issues and culvert issues, which become fisheries issues, and we have a new director of natural resources who's intimately involved in fisheries resource planning and monitoring for that. In the fire season, we can get a few days of bad air quality, but it's not such an issue. And we have a lot of invasive species issues and a very small staff capacity. So those are the challenges that we were facing when we started the GAP program. Next slide. So I guess we're going into a specific cleanup area. We call it the lane. This is the lane. And we had a lot of homeless camps and trash and abandoned cars at that time in 2018, vehicles, trash piles, unauthorized camping. Next slide. That's an aerial photo of the lane. And then this is just some specific cars and stuff that we picked up. Overall, we've picked up in the last 5 years over 100 illegal dumps, vehicles, probably more like 150. That's just one. They were all full of trash, and this is specific to the lane. Next slide. So piles of trash at the lane. Next slide. Another pile of trash at the lane. Next slide. Car and a refrigerator, appliances at the lane. This is what we were up against when we first started in 2018. Next slide. Illegal parking and homeless camps. Next slide. So this is the before picture that we looked at, aerial photo, the lane. This road would go out to the main offices. This road would go out to the gravel pit. And this is what we have now. You can see a lot of that stuff is all gone. We basically restored some wetlands in here. This is the road to the gravel pit, and this is the road to this road here is the same as this road. That's a little bit magnified, but different angle, but you get the point. We did quite a bit of work there, and it took a lot of effort, a lot of people, and a lot of trips to the dump, and a lot of, we have a local scrap collector that came out and helped pick up a lot of the cars and the trailers. Next slide. So we do have ongoing, okay, so now I'm talking on Wachell Flat, which I pointed out on the aerial photo. We have ongoing issues with some dump sites. Next slide. And Tyler goes out and does a patrol, I think twice a week or so. We take our GAP vehicle and we drive around the roads. This is one of the sites that was a burned out trailer that somebody brought out there and wanted to get rid of. And then we found it in this condition. Next slide. And this is the before of that specific site at Wachell Flat, which is also now a gravel extraction area. And this is the aftermath of the cleanup, almost done. There's a little bit of stuff there that we picked up later, but next slide. So we have another area. I didn't point it out on the map. Maybe, no, that's fine. It's called the Fish Camp, where we have tribal members and other members of the Yurok tribe, I think, that go out there and fish on the Wachell Flat on the edge. And so we had these types of issues there before. Next slide. Abandoned vehicles. Next slide. This is all Fish Camp right in here. Next slide. Next slide. Piles of stuff like that. I think, Tyler, you discovered these piles last year, maybe a couple of years ago. And then next slide. And we ended up picking up that stuff at the Fish Camp and getting it ready to haul away. They're loading it up with a bulldozer, I think. And we utilized the truck canopy as a carrier for it, all that junk. Next slide. So we have ongoing issues, but now Tyler goes out on a bi-weekly basis and we pick the stuff up. But before we had all those vehicles and boats and stuff like that, and now we usually see just little piles of stuff that we can pick up easily just on our own. Next slide. So this is another site I'll call it Land Assignment X. This is before 2018, and this is the before photograph, aerial photo, and you see our tribal regulations allow for 2 working vehicles on land assignments. I think we have 7 land assignments overall, and so you can see. Let's say these are the 2 working vehicles. Here's a couple RVs, trailers, other vehicles that aren't working. I don't know if these are trampolines or whatever they were. A lot of junk, and we have a creek. Our water system has a pump house just off the picture here. So it's important for us to get this stuff off of the land assignment because we don't want it leaching into our groundwater and polluting our public water system, which is it's isolated just for the Resighini Rancheria. Next slide. So here's some other examples of the stuff on the land assignment before we started the pickup. Just trucks full of, we could just fill it up with trash and solid waste. Next. I don't know if that land assignment was the same letter or not, but this was another burned out RV down on below the land assignment on our main road that we access along the creeks and our water quality stuff along that East Klamath Beach Road. Burned out trailer. And this is just an example of the kind of stuff that we find. Next slide. This is that last slide should be after this slide, but it's the land assignment Y. There's 2 other houses, and you see. Remember, we have a code for 2 running vehicles at each land assignment, and here we have, to say these were the 2 running vehicles, and we had a whole bunch of non-running vehicles, and again, I don't know, trampolines, I guess, were popular, and then lots of stuff. So before 2018, 19, and then after, we still had some stuff here. We're picking up these, but these are you can see a lot of the stuff has been removed. A lot of effort. I think Moonshay Dowd, our previous GAP manager, has a lot to do with getting this stuff done, and so did Frank Dowd. Next slide. So we also have an operational gravel pit, and when I started working there in October, just 2 days ago was my 6th year anniversary working in Resighini. This is what you had at the gravel pit. In fact, this is the second group of cars that we picked up there. There was 100+ cars that were stacked 3 high in the gravel pit at the time I started, but this is the one picture I could find. So picture these 3 high and then 100 removed, and then this coming again. And then we remove this, and here's your after picture with, it's a little out of focus because I had to expand the picture when I put it on there with the bin, and people were putting stuff in the bin. Next slide. Another before and after, just a different angle of the gravel pit. Another, next slide. Was this, did you? So now we're just dealing weekly basis, not even weekly basis, but once in a while we'll get these random dump sites. This is just a picture of one day's or maybe an hour where I was driving around picking up stuff off that road. Nothing like what you saw in the previous pictures with the stacked up cars, which is a good thing, I guess. Next slide. So, and now we have tribal cleanup days. Here's Fawn Murphy, our chairman, present chairman, picking up some trash on a tribal cleanup day. Next slide. And I had to get a picture of my son in there picking up trash. And so we have bags of trash, not so much truckloads of trash. This is a picture I took of a bag that my son and I picked up during that cleanup day. You know, it's not even a quarter full. Next slide. So we also do electronic waste events. And this is our previous 5 years. I'm not sure if our future GAP program is going to have that, but this is an electronic waste event. We picked up, people would deliver this stuff and we take it to the proper transfer stations and another pile of stuff at another event. Next slide. So now we'll talk a little bit about the successes of our program. We curtailed illegal dumping by, I would say 95%. That's just an estimate. We recycled hundreds of pounds of various, we recycle aluminum, glass, cardboard, all that stuff. Hundreds of pounds, probably more like over the 5 years, it's probably more like half a ton of each thing. Not the aluminum cans, but we have removed tons of illegally dumped automobiles, greater than 120. My estimate is more like 150. And we renovated the RV park campground after the 2017 flood that we had. Next slide. And some more successes. I think that first one just kind of is a duplicate. We mapped our invasive species, which technically wasn't part of our GAP program, but it's part of our wetlands program. And we began an invasive species control program where we removed about 2,000 bullfrogs in the last few years. Mostly tadpoles. We developed engineering for multiple culvert and flooding issues, and we're continuing to monitor the fisheries to inform our fisheries restoration habitat plan, which should be coming out next spring, I think, in 2024. And we developed and revised, well, I don't say we, Tyler took a solid waste ordinance development class, and he's been working on the a new solid waste ordinance that should be approved by the council early next year, I think. And next slide. And I'd like to thank the EPA for funding, the BIA for funding my bullfrog removal and some other coho studies and that type of thing, and the tribal council at the Resighini Rancheria, and the people hosting us today. And Tom Wilhite, or I think it's Willett Wilhite, he's no longer at the EPA, but he was instrumental in the GAP program previously. And then Loretta Vanegas, the EPA Region 9 project coordinator for some of this, the tribal council, the BIA staff, Davey Dowd, Gabriel Pamplona was our metal recycler guy. And a special thank you to Hans Voigt, Lori Harvey, and Michelle Kunst for their extensive revisions and edits. Next slide. And there's any questions? That's all I have, and there's my contact information.
I'm just curious, with out of all of those vehicles, was there a percentage of stolen vehicles? And were you working with any sort of like California Highway Patrol to like maybe work with them to report those stolen vehicles? I'm just curious.
Yes, I guess the short answer is yes to both questions. I believe we developed more recently some MOUs with the county law enforcement and state law enforcement on reporting stuff like that.
Wow. That's just amazing what you guys have done. I'm curious as to your bullfrog removal. We're getting into a project where we're going to be doing some bullfrog removal. What did you do? How did you do it? What did you do with them?
Well, tomorrow I'll be giving a wetlands program, excuse me, talk, and I might touch on that a little bit. I presented a couple of presentations to the amphibian population task force meeting last January about what we did and how we did it. And what I do is I humanely kill them, euthanize them, and then I dissect the ones that are main frogs, metamorphosed frogs, to see what they're eating. And we've found that they are eating native fish and amphibian larvae, and among other things, a lot of pollinating insects was a thing. And what was the rest of the question? If you write down my phone number or my email, I'll be glad to answer questions regarding that, and even maybe I could come out and help you kill some bullfrogs. Oh, by the way, if you don't know, bullfrogs are an invasive non-native species west of the Rocky Mountains. East of the Rocky Mountains, they're part of the ecosystem, but they were introduced into California in the late 1800s when a lot of the French gold miners were eating the native frogs, and the native frogs were starting to decline. They brought in the bullfrogs, and it's been here since. And it's basically everywhere in California now. So I don't think we'll ever get rid of them, but for our little reservation, it's a good thing to protect. We have a lot of coho non-natal rearing that goes on our reservation, so it's a good thing to protect the coho and the native amphibians by getting rid of them. We're not just out there killing all the frogs.
I wanted to thank you for your work, and I'm over here, and echo the comments. Just wow. I couldn't help but notice that you removed nearly as many cars as you apparently have enrolled tribal members, if I got that statistic correct, which is astounding. It also leads me to believe that the vast majority, I mean, I'm guessing here, but I think it's probably a good guess that the majority of the trash and cars are coming from off of your rancheria. I wonder whether anybody has been held accountable for this. I ask both because I think maybe a lot of us are wondering. I also used to be the environmental prosecutor in Del Norte County, and I would have loved to have prosecuted these people. But you have to have suspects, and you have to have a beyond a reasonable doubt case to go against them, notwithstanding that there are various laws that we could apply. So I also am a little concerned that you folks are taking this amazing habitat and protecting it, and that's so amazing, but there's so much habitat in Del Norte and Humboldt in that area where it's kind of like whack-a-mole, and some systemic problems that need to be addressed, and they're very difficult problems. So thank you for doing what you do.
Thank you. And what we do is when there is an abandoned vehicle, we do call it a CHP. They run it to see if it's stolen. Usually we don't know one way or another until, and then if it's on a land assignment, we can put a notice of violation on the car, and they have 7 days to get rid of it. If they don't, then we take it over it, get a tow truck, and then that money would come out of their tribal money that they get if they don't take care of it. But no, there's no suspects. We've tried putting up cameras. On my next talk tomorrow, I'll talk a little bit about my wildlife camera study with the wetland stuff. We tried putting up some cameras at some of the gates and that type of thing, but they just don't get the license plate number and that kind of thing at night. And also they can get stolen pretty easy, and Yeah, we get more like bobcats and raccoons and stuff than we do suspects.
We've worked with Fish and Wildlife in various other jurisdictions, and they've tried to use the cams, and it's been limited success. A lot of times it's more deterrence than it is actually catching the person. Because if someone sees a camera, they're likely to maybe not dump there, although if they've got a load of crap that they're looking to get rid of, chances are they're not going to go to the sanctioned facility, sadly.
Yeah, and it's interesting because in Del Norte County you can dump a ton, literal 2,000 pounds of trash for like $34 or $70 or something. So there's really no, and we also have free dumping for tribal members, not dumping, but free garbage service, not service, but they can take their garbage and dump it in our bins, and it's picked up on a weekly basis. So there's really no reason for people to be dumping out there in the first place. So cheap in Del Norte County. Well, I wouldn't say it's cheap, but it's not that expensive to take a big trailer full of stuff to the dump. Thank
Yeah.
you. So thank you very much.
I have a
Oh,
question.
okay.
Really impressive work. I'm curious, you have such great before and after photos, and some of them look like aerial photos. Do you use a drone to survey the area, or what's the strategy there?
So those pictures were from, I think, an app off of a phone, like a OnX or something like that. And I didn't realize that we were going to be doing this kind of a project or this kind of a presentation. So I had to kind of scrape for the photos that I did use. We should have taken a lot more. And that's something that if you're going to do something like this, I suggest you take a lot of photos before and after, because we kind of had to piece it together. But we do recently have got drones, and Tyler and myself are now official FAA airmen and able to fly the unmanned aerial systems. So we will be doing that in the future. We do use drones for some of our environmental monitoring, like flooding and that type of thing. So we haven't used it for that, for the solid waste removal yet.
I had a question. You mentioned the cost right here
Mhm.
of your project, or what was the total cost of the cleanup?
Well, so it wasn't one project. It was several projects over 5 years, and I don't really know what the budget was on the QAPP program, because Moonshay Dowd, our previous QAPP manager, was in charge of all that. I was just a tech that was helping her out, measuring the recyclables or weighing out recyclables and that type of thing, and picking up the trash. Yes. So we had one, but it's completely revised, and it's been worked on this year. I'll pass it off to Hans, our executive, our natural resources guy. He might be able to.
So I'm the one who actually worked and revised the ordinance, and what the process is the natural resource department goes and issues the violations, and then we bring that up to tribal council, and really tribal council is the one who has full final say in the decision.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody. Oh, I guess there's a couple more questions. That's good. We'll fill up the whole 50 minutes. Maybe not the whole 50.
I wanted to echo, like, wow, what great work have you've done so far. And I just wanted to ask, have the cleanups on the like individual land assignments that you've done on those properties, have they stayed clean, and like how have tribal members reacted to that?
Some of them stayed clean, and some of them we had ongoing issues with it. But we're on it. We go out there almost every day and drive around and look at stuff. So it's not that big of a place, 450 acres. And we have a pretty good road system with the back roads and stuff. So we can get out there, and now we have the drone. We can look at stuff too. So we're on it like on a weekly basis.
Hello. My question is, the 2-car policy per household, was that hard to get going?
I don't really know, because it was already in place when I started in October 17. So thank you very much, everybody.